The Tar Heels can win the ACC tournament, and honestly, they might have to.
This is Tyler Hansbrough, and you're listening to Locked On Tar Heels.
You are Locked On Tar Heels, your daily podcast on the UNC Tar Heels. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey there, what's up? It's Tuesday, March 11th, 2025. Welcome into the Locked On Tar Heels podcast, the only daily North Carolina show out there. I'm your host, Isaac Schade. You're joining me at the place to get your Tar Heels content every single day. It's all part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Thank you so much for making us your first listener watch to get your Tuesday going the right way. This episode is brought to you by the all-new 2025 Nissan Armada. Stay with us for the Armada Team of the Week coming up later in the episode. Shout out to the everydayers, all the Locked On Tar Heels Discord members, and of course, our great insiders. Coming up on the show today, the ACC Tournament begins today with the bottom 6 teams all in action. Remember, 3 teams didn't even make this bad boy, but the bottom 3 games crack up. So I want to talk about first, like a head in the clouds kind of dream scenario for Carolina in the ACC Tournament. Then segment 2, we'll get to what's maybe a more realistic outcome for this week. And then third, coming up today, the ACC Postseason Awards came out on Monday. I want to share those with you and look at Carolina did not get their name called very much in this thing. Unfortunate stuff there, all right? So that's where we're headed today, and let's get right into it. So as I said, no. It's Tuesday. We got to get to the Tuesday trivia question first. What are we doing here, Schade? Don't get the cart before the horse. I apologize for my silliness there. All right, here you go. Since we're talking ACC Postseason Awards, I got a little postseason trivia for you. All right. 6 different Tar Heels have won the ACC Player of the Year in the 2000s. Who are they? And if you want bonus points, tell me the years as well. The answer to that coming up at the very end of the show. Okay, as I said, ACC Tournament starting today. Spectrum Center in Charlotte, that's good news. Carolina has already played there this year. That was the Jumpman Classic against who did Carolina live? Florida. Should have won that game. Okay. Anyway, the games today, the first one is the one we care about, number 12 seed Notre Dame against 13th seeded Pitt. That's 2 p.m. on ACC Network, followed by 10 Virginia Tech against Cal 15th. That is 4:30 Eastern on ACC Network. And then wrapping up Tuesday's action is number 11 FSU at number 14. I say against number 14 Syracuse. That's at 7 Eastern on ACC Network. By the way, I wanted to do this in real time. I want to purposefully quiz myself. Who are the 3 teams that did not make the ACC tournament? One of them I know very well is the NC State Wolfpack. Because how could you forget that, right? And then it's Boston College and it's Miami. Those are the 3 teams because they're not anywhere on the bracket. Okay, good. Sometimes I just like to test myself and see if I can pull things like that. So what I want to do then is look at the dream scenario for saying Carolina will win the ACC tournament, and here's why. Let's talk through that. In that scenario, how does it go? Carolina will either play on Wednesday Notre Dame or Pittsburgh. In this scenario, they breeze past whichever of those teams. Yes, Carolina had trouble with both of them going 1-1 against Pitt and needing, late game help to beat Notre Dame. In this scenario, with the way Carolina has been playing lately, different team than they were when they played either of those 3 games. They had no trouble and breeze right on past the Irish or the Panthers. And then up next is Wake Forest. Similar kind of thing. Remember, Carolina lost in Winston-Salem 1 point. They breezed by Wake Forest. No problems there, making up for that loss in Winston-Salem. Hold down Hunter Salas and take care of business. And then that brings us to Friday in the key critical matchup, which would be against Duke. And this is where the dream scenario is like, really? Isaac, are you really saying this? Yes, because it's sports and anything can happen. Is this the most likely scenario? Absolutely not for Carolina to beat Duke. But we've seen crazier things in sport than this Carolina team beating this Duke team. That would not be the craziest thing any of us have ever witnessed. So go with me on it. First off, neither team has gone 3-0 in a season against the other since the 01-02 season when Duke did it. And again, that doesn't mean it can't happen that Duke would beat Carolina all 3 times in a season that they play. But it's been a minute. It's been over 2 decades. So that's the thing, right? Like the whole it's hard to beat a team 3 times. That's real. Next thing, Duke is playing for something. They're playing to maintain their number 1 seed status and to win an ACC, like sweep the ACC regular season and tournament championship. I hear that. But Carolina's the desperate team here. Hopefully desperate in a good way, not desperate in like they clinch up and play too hard, too tight. So my question is, will Duke care as much as Carolina? Yes, they want. It's like with that whole adage of we're playing a game, so we might as well win, right? Sure. But Carolina's like literally fighting for their lives in this game, because I'm of the estimation that you win this game and you're in great shape. You lose it and you need everyone else to fall apart all around you. Carolina, desperate team. I think that matters, right? And we've seen this in other teams like Auburn. Clinched multiple games ago, the SEC regular season, and just kind of coasted to the end, lost back-to-back games. I'm unbothered by it because it's like, whatever, fine. It reminds me of the Florida team, the second year of their back-to-back championships. They were just like, can we get to the postseason? I'm ready for that. And then another thing, as you think about facing Duke, is like, that's the semifinal round. Think about Carolina in so many of the semifinal, the years that they've won the national championship and they've lost in the ACC semifinals. So ultimately, it's like, yes, Duke would love to win this game, but we will care more. It will matter more to the Tar Heels because they so desperately need it. So there's that. And then the other thing I'd say about facing Duke is, yes, Duke got the early run, got out to a 15-point lead in the first half. Carolina reeled them back into 1 at halftime. And then Duke pushed it way back out in the second half. As I've said, like, turn the water off, man. Duke's defense was the key factor in that basketball game on Saturday night. But Carolina did have a 7-point lead. Carolina was in position to keep expanding that. I think it was at 5 points at the moment where there was that terrible call as Seth Trimble was going for a loose ball that he had just tipped, and Knipple ran into him and they called incidental contact. I'm still like, no, I got no time for that. All that to say, Carolina showed on Saturday that they can get a lead on Duke. But this time, in this dream scenario, Carolina holds on. They continue making shots down the stretch. The offense doesn't stagnate. And Duke's like, fine, whatever. And they just kind of pack it in and get ready for the NCAA tournament. So in the dream scenario, Carolina beats Duke. Close game. Give me a 3-point win for the Tar Heels. And then Carolina moves on to the championship game on Saturday night where they face the 3rd-seeded Clemson Tigers. It's another hot shooting night for Carolina, and they avenge their 20-point loss inside Little John Coliseum. And that's what I like about this stretch. Think about it. If Pittsburgh beats Notre Dame, Carolina, in order to win this championship scenario, would have to beat 4 teams that beat them in the regular season. Pitt split with Pitt. Wake Forest lost the only meeting to them. 0-2 versus Duke, 0-1 versus Clemson. So Carolina wins this thing in dramatic fashion. They get those 2 other quad 1 wins we've been looking for, but it doesn't matter because in this scenario where you win the ACC tournament, you're the automatic qualifier and you're in. Also, you're probably a bid thief and somebody's really mad at you that is now bumped off the bubble. So that's my hope, man. Just go all the way through it and truly take this thing out of the committee's hands. Play like you've got nothing to lose because you might truly, honestly not. You know, like if Carolina doesn't beat Duke, and we'll talk about that more in the second segment, but like, what have you got to lose? It's the end of RJ Davis's career, man. Just go out, let it rip. Let it rip. So that's the dream scenario. And before we move on, I guess I do want to ask the question, what if Carolina beats Duke, but then loses in the final to Clemson, Louisville? I don't see anybody else getting there, honestly. I mean, they could. Hello, NC State last year. But what happens in that scenario? Is that enough to get you into the tournament? If you get that quad 1 win against Duke, and it is Duke who's number 1 in the nation right now, that carries a ton of weight. But then you lose in the championship game. Is that enough? I would say, yeah. And obviously it's going to depend on what the teams around you do. But I think getting that second quad 1 win And with Carolina's good numbers in predictive metrics and some other things, I think that would be enough to do it. And that Duke win would carry a lot of weight. As we've said all season long, yes, would rather not be in this scenario. And Carolina should have done what they needed to do to not be in this scenario, but they are. And so we deal with it. So there's the scenario. Carolina runs all the way, wins the ACC championship, and goes dancing in the big dance. Now, that's the dream bracket. What is a more realistic outcome for the ACC tournament this week? That's what I want to unpack next, and we'll do that in just a second. Right after I tell you about Nissan, the Armada Team of the Week is brought to you by our friends at Nissan and the all-new 2025 Nissan Armada. Each week, our Locked On College basketball experts are picking one team that stands apart. From top-seeded stars to the unexpected upsets, these guys showcase the strength and sheer power needed to push their team forward. And I'm already going to say right now, this is going to be difficult, but we'll get through it together. Why? Because this week's Armada and clear-cut Team of the Week is the Duke Blue Devils. Jon Scheyer's team, led by National Player of the Year candidate Cooper Flagg, just ripped through the ACC going 19-1. The Blue Devils were plus 434 points in ACC games, the largest point differential by a power conference team in league play since Kentucky in 1953-54. When it comes to the Nissan Armada, they say go forth and conquer it, and that's exactly what the Duke Blue Devils have done. It's clear that our team of the week is out here ready to conquer the road ahead with confidence, just like you can in the all-new Nissan Armada or any of Nissan's all-new outstanding vehicles. Take the Nissan Armada, Rogue, or Pathfinder and go find your next big adventure. Shop NissanUSA.com. Now, as we look at what I would imagine is going to be a more realistic view of what will probably happen this week, for those of you watching on YouTube, I've actually pulled up the bracket so you can follow along in that way. If you're listening back on audio, it's fine. You can pull it up on some other device or just listen. We won't leave you behind here. So here's the realistic question for me. I truly do believe, I feel strongly and I feel good that Carolina will beat Notre Dame or Pitt on Wednesday and Wake Forest on Thursday. I like, could Carolina lose either of those games? Yes, and be done. But I truly believe they'll win. There's too much on the line. They've been playing too well. They rebound from Saturday and are in great shape. That's what I'm looking for. So let's say that Carolina does that, but then falls to Duke. Is that enough? I think a lot of us are of the mind that, like, hey, winning 2 games in the ACC tournament, that's enough. But the problem with that is there's no context to it. The problem with that is Carolina's draw is frustrating because of how things came together. I'll show you what could have been another scenario, but I said this a couple times recently on shows. Literally the only quad 1 opportunity on Carolina's side of the bracket is Duke. The other quad 1 opportunities are Carolina. They can't play themselves, but the other 3, Louisville, Clemson, and SMU, are all sitting on the other side of the bracket, and Carolina can't do anything about that. So in this scenario, you lose to Duke. At that point, you have 13 losses on the season, and you still only have 1 quad 1 victory, and there are no chances to add more, and none of the other games are going to turn into one. In that scenario, I got to be honest, I do not see enough other teams on the bubble around Carolina losing enough games, because everyone can only lose 1 more. You know what I'm saying? Like, the most losses anyone can add to their resume now is 1. And for the most part, because of the buys that the teams get, it's going to be hard to take a bad loss. So that's the problem Carolina's in, is that they've almost got to beat Duke. In my estimation, that's the most likely scenario, and that scares me. But that means, look, until the final whistle sounds, though, we're in. This is what we do. This is fandom of sport. What I'm frustrated about is the draw. And part of it is SMU losing at Florida State on Saturday. Here's how different things would have been had SMU won at Florida State. Duke, Louisville, Clemson still would have been 1, 2, and 3, but SMU would be the 4 instead of the 6. Wake would fall to the 5. Carolina would fall to the 6 in that scenario. And it's still not, what my favorite thing was, because my favorite was SMU the 4 with Carolina the 5, where Carolina could get a game in before that, would still be Notre Dame or Pitt, and then get to play SMU as a quad 1 game in the quarterfinals before facing Duke in the semis. But even in this scenario where SMU won Saturday, Carolina would have been the 6. They would have either played Florida State or Syracuse in their first game on Wednesday. Feel good about those. After that, your second game, the quarterfinal, would have been Clemson instead of Wake. So there's your quad 1 right there. Again, Clemson, by no stretch of the imagination, and easily, or even like, well, yeah, of course we're going to win that game. By no means. But you got to feel better about your chances there than you do at playing Duke. And that's what Carolina would have gotten. In that scenario, if you get past if you get past Clemson, then you probably got Louisville waiting on you. Another quad 1 opportunity. So back-to-back quad 1 opportunities. If you get past Louisville, then you've probably got Duke waiting for you in the championship game with a third straight quad 1 opportunity. But at that point, you've already banked 2 of them, and now you've got 3. And in that scenario, had Carolina been on the other side of the bracket with Clemson and Louisville, I'm feeling much better about the possibility of stacking a couple quad 1 games. That's why it's so frustrating. And again, I know all of this is Carolina's fault. I'm not putting this on SMU because that's silly. But I'm just saying that's how just different it would have been with even SMU pulling that game out. So bummer there. Oh, man. Now, I guess I will say the negative in having been the 6th seed, if that had worked out, it would have been a whole bunch of late games. 9:30 p.m. Eastern for the first one, 9:30 p.m. Eastern for the quarterfinal, 9:30 Eastern for the semifinal. The nice thing is, as things stand now, Carolina plays at 2:30 Wednesday, 2:30, should they win, plays at 2:30 Thursday against Wake, and then the semifinal game against Duke would be at 7 Eastern. So there's a nice little silver lining. We don't all have to go take naps before the games happen and take place. So, man, the realistic scenario, again, going back to it, is either Pitt or Notre Dame. For me, honestly, I know this is probably going to sound crazy. I would rather play Pitt. Marcus Burton scares me to death. He is so good. So good. And I know Notre Dame's not had a great year, the 12 seed for crying out loud. But in a one-off, and he can get going. And I know Pitt's got Jalen Lowe and a couple other guys, but Jalen Lowe just doesn't scare me as much as Marcus Burton does. So I would rather play Pitt. And then you get this game against Wake Forest, which again, as I said, it's very winnable. But the problem is that it's not Q1. And that's where the system frustrates me. Like, just because of Wake's computer numbers being so low. And this was even before they lost a bunch of games at the end of the season. This would not have been a quad 1 game. And that's a frustration. But I really think Carolina can get them. And then it all hinges on beating Duke. That's what has to happen. I know that is probably scary for a lot of us, but if Carolina wants to get into this NCAA tournament, they got to go through the Blue Devils and they got to beat them. And so I'm so hopeful to win 2 games and get a third crack at John Shire's club. Well, guys, the ACC Postseason Awards came out on Monday, and as you would probably guess, given the season the Tar Heels have gone through, there isn't exactly a ton of Tar Heel representation. We'll look at that in just a second. Right after I tell you about Roy. Hey, attention, Locked On Tar Heels fans. Do you ever wish you could directly support your favorite Carolina athletes and be part of their journey? Well, now you can with Roy, the NIL app that puts fans just like you in control. Before Roy, NIL deals were often handled behind closed doors, and fans didn't have a clear way to directly support the players they love. And now, though, with Roy, you can make a real impact and feel closer to the athletes representing Carolina. With Roy, you get to choose the player you want to support, decide how much you want to contribute, and receive exclusive content from the athletes that you back. The best part, if your player decides to transfer, you just get your money back. It's a risk-free way to show your support and make your voice heard. Support your favorite players directly and help shape the future of Carolina sports. Download the Roy app right now from the App Store and start backing Tar Heel athletes the way they deserve with transparency, trust, and real impact. This is the future of college sports. Join it now by downloading Roy and supporting your favorite athletes. The ACC Postseason Awards came out on Monday, the day, or 2 days, I guess, after the regular season ended. And there just is not much Tar Heel representation anywhere on this thing. I'll read you. You've probably seen it, but I'll read these to you. We'll have some takes, and then we'll get out of here. Individual awards, perhaps the least surprising thing ever. Cooper Flagg is both the Player of the Year and Rookie of the Year. Defensive Player of the Year is Louisville's Chucky Hepburn. He's had quite the year on both ends of the court. Most Improved goes to Donald Hand of Boston College. He did have a nice come up this year. Sixth man, freshman Jeremiah Wilkinson from Cal, who's really good. And then Coach of the Year, Louisville's Pat Kelsey for turning around the Cardinals, which, yeah, maybe you see John Shire getting a nod, and we'll go to the votes here in just a second. But Pat Kelsey is the clear and obvious choice there. First team, Cooper Flagg gets 400 points. Maxime Reynaud from Stanford is the second leading point getter. Then Chucky Hepburn, again, is number 3. Chase Hunter from Clemson is 4th, and Hunter Salas is 5th. So that's your first team, all ACC. Cooper Flagg, Maxime Reynaud, Hepburn, Chase Hunter, and Hunter Salas. By the way these points are all determined, if somebody votes for you to be on first team, you get 5 points. If somebody votes for you to be on second team, you get 3 points. Third team, 1 point. And that's how these are tabulated. So Cooper Flagg had 400 points. I think that means there's one person that didn't vote for him or abstained, because there were 81 voters, and 81 times 5 is 405. Either one person just completely left Cooper Flagg off their ballot or something. That seems odd to me. Anyway, second team, leading vote getter on the second, because this is how they order it, right? Like the most points goes higher up on the list. So RJ Davis, the top of the second team, all ACC, 241 points, followed by Marcus Burton from Notre Dame, we just talked about, and then Ian the Chef Shefflin from Clemson, Con Knipple from Duke, and Jameer Watkins from Florida State. That's your second team, headlined by RJ Davis. Third team, Terrence Edwards Jr. from Louisville, Tyrese Proctor from Duke, Bay and Dongo from Georgia Tech, Boopy Miller from SMU, and Jalen Lowe from Pitt. So there are your 3 all ACC teams. I'll read you the honorable mentions, just kind of fly through those. Matthew Cleveland, Miami, Andrei Stojakovic, Cal, Nathan George, Georgia Tech, Isaac McNeely, Virginia, JJ Starling, Syracuse, Donald Hand from Virginia, Cam Hildreth, Wake, Kaman Malawach from Duke, Victor Locken from Clemson, and Eddie Lampkin from Syracuse. There's a couple things for me on both the good and the bad on the Carolina side of this. I assumed that RJ would make it somewhere on one of these 3 teams, but I got to be honest, he's higher than I thought he was going to be, given the drop in just shooting numbers. From an insider's perspective, as somebody that covers Carolina all the time, I know that a lot of RJ's numbers have really rebounded, are now pretty comparable, but even though they are still lower in terms of 3-point shooting and field goal percentage, free throw percentage is up from last year. We talked about that recently. But what RJ is doing is enough of other things. Assist to turnover ratio is a great example of it, that I think that helps bring his stock up. And then I'm sure name recognition does have something to do with it. But the fact that he was the 6th leading point getter was kind of shocking to me. I got to be honest. I thought he would be low second or somewhere on the third team. So kudos to RJ, and kudos to the voters for getting in on this. What is interesting to me, though, and I think maybe it's right, is that no other Tar Heels got any points for the all ACC teams. And as I process through that, I think I get it, though. It's like, you wouldn't put Elliot on there. You've had a revolving door at the 3 right now. It's Drake Powell. He's great. I don't see him getting a vote above some of these other people. Ian Jackson, maybe. I think just because people look at offense and they're like, ooh, sparkly offense, right? I think that might have been something, but nobody in the front court, Van Allen Lubin probably would be the guy that has the most recognition for his play, especially of late with all these multiple double-digit games he's strung together scoring-wise. But yeah, outside of RJ, you just assume maybe a Tar Heel's going to be on one of these other teams or at least get some votes or some points, but it didn't happen. Just RJ. And I think more than anything, that's not an indictment on the voters. I think that's an indictment on Carolina's season. That's the problem. Defensive player of the year, not a single Tar Heel vote here. Chucky Hepburn led the way with 32. Cooper Flagg was after that. And then you had Jaden Zachary, Zach Austin from Pitt, Malik Brown from Duke, Chad Venning, Boston College, Kaman Malawach, Sion James, Madi Sissoko from Cal, Tay Davis, Notre Dame, and Cam Hildreth from Wake. This one was a little bit shocking to me that Seth wasn't on this list. Drake Powell wasn't, like, didn't even get votes. Like, I could see them obviously not being the defensive player of the year, but surely, I guess maybe when we got down to the all defensive team, you would expect to see some of that. But anyway, I couldn't believe it. Rookie of the year, this one's kind of funny to me. Again, 81 voters. Cooper Flagg received 79 votes. Not all 81. The other two went to Cal's Jeremiah Wilkinson. And look, Wilkinson is a great basketball player. He's going to be really, really good. But you voted for him over Cooper Flagg. Who are those two people? Because surely you're from Cal's contingent of voting, right? Or maybe Stanford. I don't know, but really, I don't see it. Obviously, Cooper Flagg is the enemy. It's Duke, but we can recognize, right? Like, he is clearly should be the unanimous rookie of the year in this league. ACC sixth man of the year is Jeremiah Wilkinson. That's the other thing. This dude ain't even a starter. Anyway, Jeremiah Wilkinson gets the sixth man of the year. Duncan Powell from Georgia Tech is second. Ian Jackson, third with 13 votes. Then Malik Brown from Duke. Kario Okendo, from SMU, and Isaiah Evans from Duke. Funny that there are two different Duke Blue Devils on here for sixth man of the year. You can only have one sixth man. I get it with lineups changing stuff, whatever, but I just thought it was odd. Most improved player, another place where there was not a single Tar Heel vote. I thought, like, man, look at Seth Trimble and his come up. Nah, nothing. Donald Hand Jr. from Boston College wins this. Jalen Blakes is on the list. Jalen Blakes. Tay Davis, Nathan George, Jalen Lowe from Pitt, Andrei Stojakovic, Andrew Rohde from Virginia. We just recently saw him for the first time. BJ Edwards, SMU, Eddie Lampkin, and Duke's Tyrese Proctor. Coach of the year, no surprise that Pat Kelsey won. John Shire does get the second most votes, followed by Brad Brownell at Clemson. I can get behind that, honestly. PJ Hall's gone. You lose some key integral pieces, and still, I think Clemson's going to be really good in the NCAA tournament. Anyway, and then Kyle Smith from Stanford got a vote. Again, don't understand that one. Anyway, all defensive team, all rookie team. Ian Jackson made the all rookie team. No Drake Powell on that list, but you don't see all the voting. You just see who made it. So there's that. Let's wrap things up with our Trivia Tuesday answer. 6 Tar Heels have won ACC Player of the Year in the 2000s. Who are they? We're going to go most recent and work our way backwards. Boy, if you don't get this first one, I'm going to be really mad at you. Really disappointed because it was RJ Davis last year in 2024. Before that, you got to go back to the last national championship season. Justin Jackson in 2017. What a jump he had, speaking of most improved from sophomore to junior year. Prior to that, it was Tyler Zeller in 2012. Prior to that, Ty Lawson in 2009. Prior to that, Tyler Hansbrough in 2008. And prior to that, you got to go all the way back to 2001 with Joe Forte, who actually shared the award that year. Any guesses as to who that was? You can pause it because I'm about to say it. Shane Battier from Duke. He shared that award with. So Carolina went on a run there. 08, 09, and 12. Tar Heels had the ACC Player of the Year, and deservedly so. Man, what a special time for Carolina there in the late 8s. 10 was obviously down. 11 started building back, but 12, man, that team, so special. So special. Ethan Rogge, you're the worst. Hurting Kendall Marshall like that. I mean, I laugh, but seriously, I'm not laughing at the situation. I'm laughing at the dumb voice I just did. So anyway, guys, that's it for today's episode. We will get ready on Wednesday's show for the first ACC tournament game. Whoever it is will play. We will know that because it's going to be earlier in the day on Tuesday. Coach Pat Kilby. No. I'm sorry. Coach Rob is joining me on Wednesday's show to get ready for that. That'll be a lot of fun. And then Coach Pat Kilby, freshly minted state champion Pat Kilby, will join me on Thursday's show to unpack that first game for Carolina in the ACC tournament and hopefully get prepared for the Wake Forest game if Carolina is so fortunate to win. Guys, if you've not subscribed to Locked On Tar Heels on YouTube, last I checked, it was at 9,999. So you might, let's check it together in real time. You might have an opportunity to be the 10,000th YouTube subscriber for Locked On Tar Heels. Yes, it is, as we sit here in real time, it is still sitting at 9,999. So it could be you. Ooh, wouldn't that be crazy, man? Hop in and make it happen. If you've not subscribed to the show if you've not joined the Locked On Tar Heels Discord, we'd love to have you there. That link's in the show notes. It's free to join. And if you've not gone deeper with the show, Locked On Tar Heels Insiders, that'd be a great place to be. Lots of perks, including free access to all of my record books, stats, and charts and data that I keep on my own. Really helpful stuff. And if you're a stat head, a nerd junkie, you're going to want to get in on that. Guys, it's always a great day to be a Tar Heel. Please, let's keep this thing rolling for a couple more days. We need some more RJ Davis in our lives. That's a fact of the matter. Tomorrow could be his last ever game as a Tar Heel. That reality has to sink in. Oh, man, that's tough. It's always a great day to be a Tar Heel. We'll talk again tomorrow. But until then, peace.